Far away from Earth, in the center of the galaxy, there was a great space station. It was called the Grand Hall. This station was the home of the Galactic Council. Every powerful alien race had a seat there. The Voron, tall and gray, with eyes like glass. The Threll, small and fast with 6 arms. The Kion, giants, made of stone and metal, and many others. For 1,000 years, these races had ruled the galaxy together. Today, the Grand Hall was full. Every seat was taken. Every alien leader was present. Something big was about to happen. A tall Voron named Speaker Doran stood at the center of the hall. He wore a long silver robe. His eyes were calm, but his hands were shaking with excitement. He raised one hand, and the whole hall went silent. "Today," Doran said, his voice loud and clear, "we end a war that lasted 20 long years." The hall stayed silent. Everyone waited. "Today," he continued, "I declare that the human race is extinct." For 1 second, nobody moved. Then the whole hall exploded with noise. Aliens stood up. Some cheered. Some cried with joy. Some hugged each other. Even races that had never touched before. The sound was so loud it shook the walls of the Grand Hall. Doran raised his hand again. Slowly the noise died down. 20 years ago, he said, the humans attacked us. They came from a small blue planet called Earth. Nobody expected much from them. They were young, they were weak, they had only one planet. He paused, his eyes turned hard. But we were wrong. A large screen appeared behind him. It showed old images, human warships, fast and deadly, cutting through enemy fleets. Human soldiers fighting on strange planets, never giving up. Cities on fire, space battles with hundreds of ships. The humans were small in number, Doran said, but they fought like no other race we have ever seen. They did not fight for land. They did not fight for resources. They fought because they refused to lose, refused to kneel, refused to disappear quietly. The hall was quiet now. Every alien remembered the war. Every alien had lost something. Ships, soldiers, family. 3 years ago, Doran continued, we made a final decision. We could not defeat the humans in normal battle, so we built the Hammer Fleet. 1,000 warships, the largest fleet ever built in galactic history. We sent it to Earth. The screen changed. It showed a massive fleet of alien ships, more than anyone could count, moving through space toward a small blue and green planet. 6 months ago, Doran said, his voice getting louder, the Hammer Fleet arrived at Earth, and within 3 days, the screen showed the final images. Explosions in space, human ships burning, and then the planet itself hit again and again until fire covered the surface. Earth burned. Silence again. But this time it felt heavy, not because of sadness, but because everyone understood what this meant. The greatest threat the galaxy had ever known was gone. Our scouts have searched the human home system for 6 months, Doran said. No signal, no survivors, no ships. The human fleet, their armies, their cities, all destroyed. Today, I officially declare on behalf of the Galactic Council that the species known as Homo sapiens, the humans of Earth, is extinct. The hall erupted again louder than before. This time Doran did not try to stop it. He let them celebrate. He smiled and turned to watch the images still playing on the screen. Images of a burning planet. Images of an empire that finally felt safe. At the edge of the hall, one alien did not celebrate. Her name was Fra, a young Threll diplomat. She was small with 6 thin arms and large black eyes. She had fought in the war too, but not with weapons. She worked in communications, listening to signals from across the galaxy. Something did not feel right to her. She remembered a report from 3 months ago. A strange signal, very weak, coming from far outside the human home system. Nobody had paid attention to it. It was marked as unknown, likely space debris and forgotten. Fra looked around at the celebrating crowd. Everyone was so happy, so relieved. She told herself she was being foolish. The humans were gone. The war was over. She should be happy too, but a small part of her mind kept whispering, what if we are wrong? Far away from the Grand Hall, at the very edge of the galaxy, near a quiet border system, an old alien scout named Biexa was doing a boring routine patrol. His job was simple. Watch the empty space near the border. Make sure nothing strange happened, and report back every day. Nothing ever happened out here. It was the perfect job for someone who wanted a quiet life. BXA was a Voron, older than most, with gray skin and tired eyes. He had fought in the human war too many years ago. He had seen friends die. He had seen ships destroyed. When the war ended, he asked for the quietest job in the fleet. This border patrol was exactly what he wanted. He sat in his small scout ship drinking a warm drink, watching his monitors. Nothing but stars and empty space. He almost fell asleep. Then a small red light blinked on his screen. BXA sat up straight. He had not seen that light blink in over a year. It meant his sensors had detected something. He checked the readings. A single object very far away moving slowly. His ship's computer analyzed it. Unknown object detected, the computer said in a flat voice. Size large, estimated length 800 meters. Metal composition unknown alloy. Movement pattern controlled, not random. BXA frowned. Controlled movement meant something was steering it. Space debris did not move in a controlled pattern. Show me the object, BXA said. The screen showed a shape. It was long, dark and damaged. Parts of its hull were burned black. Long cracks ran across its surface. One side had a large hole, like something had torn through it. But despite all the damage, the shape was clear. It was a warship. BX's hands went cold. He had seen this shape before many years ago during the war. He knew this design. He knew it very well, because it had destroyed 3 of his friends' ships in a single battle many years ago. It was a human warship. That is impossible, BXA whispered to himself. Humans are extinct. The council declared it official 6 months ago. He checked his sensors again, thinking there must be an error. But the readings were the same. A human warship, badly damaged, moving slowly through space, heading in one direction toward the Empire's capital. BX's training told him what to do. Report immediately. Do not engage. Do not approach. Just report and wait for orders. His hand shook as he opened a communication channel to the nearest command base. This is Border Scout 72, he said, trying to keep his voice calm. I have detected an unknown vessel near Sector 9. Vessel design matches. Human military class. There was a pause on the other end. Then a voice answered, bored and unimpressed. Scout 72, please repeat. Did you say human? Confirmed, BXA said. Human military class warship. Heavily damaged but moving under its own power. Current heading is toward the capital region. Another pause. Longer this time. Scout 72. That is not possible. Humanity was declared extinct today by the Galactic Council. You are likely detecting old wreckage or debris from the war. BXA looked at his screen again. The ship was still moving. Debris did not move like that. Debris did not choose a direction and hold to it. With respect, BXA said, this object is moving under control. It is not debris. Request permission to send full data to Fleet Command. The voice on the other end said, fine, send your data. But Scout 72, I suggest you check your sensors. Probably a malfunction. Old equipment can be unreliable. The channel closed. BXA sat alone in his small ship, staring at the screen. He watched the damaged warship small and slow on his monitor, moving through the dark of space. Something inside him, an old soldier's instinct, told him this was not a malfunction. He sent the full sensor data to Fleet Command, just as he was told. Then he watched the ship a little longer, until it moved out of his sensor range, disappearing into the darkness once more. Good luck to whoever you are, he whispered. Not knowing why, he said it. Maybe it was respect for an old enemy. Maybe it was fear. Deep inside the damaged warship, in a cold, dark control room, lit only by weak emergency lights, one human sat completely still. His name did not matter anymore. Not to the galaxy that had declared his entire species extinct, but he had a name. His name was Ryan Cole, and he was the last human alive. Ryan had been in stasis sleep for many months, his body frozen in a special chamber to keep him alive, while his ship traveled through the emptiness of space. He had woken up only days ago, weak and confused, his muscles aching from disuse. The first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was a message blinking red on the main screen of his ship. A message his ship's computer had prepared for him, using the last data it received before losing contact with Earth. Earth, no signal detected. Status destroyed. Human population, 0 survivors detected. Galactic Council declaration, species extinct. Ryan had stared at that message for a long time. He did not cry. He did not scream. He simply sat there in the cold silence of his broken ship, feeling something inside him go completely empty. Everyone he knew, his family, his friends, his home, gone. He thought about giving up for a moment. Just a moment. He thought about turning off the ship's systems and letting himself drift silently into the dark, joining everyone he had lost. But then he remembered something, a promise he made a long time ago to his commanding officer, right before Earth's final battle began. If you survive, and we don't, you finish this. You make them remember what humanity was. Ryan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, something had changed. The sadness was still there, deep inside him. But now there was something else too. Something colder, something sharper. Anger, purpose. He stood up slowly, his legs weak from the long sleep, and walked to the ship's main control console. His fingers moved across old, worn buttons, checking every system one by one. Engines damaged but working. Weapons mostly destroyed except for one system hidden deep in the ship's core, protected during the attack. Life support barely functioning, just enough to keep him alive. He smiled a small, tired smile. "They think we're all gone," he said quietly to the empty room. "They think this war is over." He pulled up a star map on the screen. Thousands of points of light representing star systems across the galaxy. He found the one he was looking for, marked with a symbol shaped like a crown. The capital of the alien empire, the heart of everything that had destroyed his home. "They're wrong," Ryan said, his voice steady now. "This isn't over, not even close." He set a new course. His damaged ship, the last of its kind, began moving slowly through the dark, heading directly toward the empire that believed it had already won the war. Behind him, a soft beeping sound came from the ship's weapon system, the one system that had survived the attack on Earth, the one weapon that even the humans' own commanders had kept secret until the very end. Ryan looked at the weapon readout and felt a small, grim satisfaction. "They forgot one thing," he whispered. Humans never go quietly. Back at the Grand Hall, the celebration continued long into the night. Music played. Alien leaders drank and laughed together. Speaker Doran stood at the highest point of the hall, looking down at the joyful crowd, feeling proud of what he had accomplished. Peace, real peace. After 20 long years of war, he did not know yet that far away, an old scout named BX's sensor data was sitting unread in a busy fleet command office, ignored by tired officers who believed it was just another false alarm. He did not know that a single badly damaged human warship was moving steadily through the dark, growing closer to his empire's capital with every passing hour. He did not know that the human race was not extinct. Not yet, but soon, very soon, the entire galaxy would learn the truth. And they would learn it in the worst possible way, because somewhere in the emptiness of space, one human warship carried the last hope and the deadliest anger of an entire species that refused to die, and it was coming home. 3 days had passed since the Galactic Council declared humanity extinct. The celebrations were still happening across many alien worlds. Flags were raised. Statues were being built to remember the great victory. Children on 100 different planets were told bedtime stories about the defeat of the terrible humans. But far away, in the cold darkness between the stars, a different story was being written. Ryan Cole stood in the control room of his ship, staring at the star map. His ship's name was carved into the metal wall behind him, barely visible under the damage. Last Light. It was one of Earth's finest warships once, built for speed and power. Now it was a broken shadow of what it used to be. Half of its hull was burned. Many of its rooms were sealed shut, filled with vacuum where the walls had been torn open. But it still flew. It still had a heart, and that heart was Ryan. He walked slowly through the ship's narrow hallways, his boots echoing on the metal floor. Every step reminded him how alone he was. Empty rooms, silent hallways, no voices, no laughter, no crew calling out orders, just him and the low hum of the ship's dying engines. He stopped in front of a large window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, far behind him, was a small blue planet that no longer existed. He closed his eyes and let himself remember just for a moment. 2 years before the fall of Earth, Ryan was a young pilot, barely 25 years old, standing proudly in his uniform at a base on the far edge of human territory. His squad was small, only 12 pilots chosen for a special mission to test experimental technology, weapons that Earth scientists had been secretly developing in case the war turned worse. His commanding officer was a tall woman named Captain Elena Voss, tough and fair, respected by every pilot under her command. She gathered her squad in a small briefing room one evening, the lights dim, the mood serious. "What I'm about to tell you does not leave this room," Captain Voss said, her voice low. "Earth is losing this war. We all know it. The enemy has more ships, more resources, more soldiers. If this continues, we will lose everything." The room was silent. Everyone already knew this, but hearing it spoken out loud felt heavier. "But we have one advantage," Voss continued. "Our scientists have developed something new, a weapon system unlike anything the enemy has seen. It's not finished yet, not ready for full battle, but it's close. And if things go badly, if Earth falls—" She paused, looking at each pilot in the room. "Someone needs to survive with it. Someone needs to carry it forward, so that even if we lose today, we have a chance tomorrow." She turned to a large monitor and showed them the weapon's design. It was strange, unlike any human technology they had seen before. Long, crystal-like structures connected to a core reactor. "This is called the Ember Core," Voss explained. "It doesn't just fire like a normal weapon. It absorbs energy from enemy attacks and turns that energy into an even stronger counterattack. The more they hit us, the stronger we hit back." Ryan remembered raising his hand. "Captain, why are you telling us this now?" Voss looked at him directly. "Because one of you is going to carry it. One ship hidden, protected, kept as a last resort. If Earth ever falls, that ship becomes humanity's last weapon. Its pilot becomes humanity's last soldier." Nobody in the room spoke. Everyone understood the weight of what she was saying. "I've chosen the ship," Voss said. "Last light, and I've chosen its pilot." She looked directly at Ryan. "You." Ryan remembered his heart pounding in his chest. He remembered feeling proud and terrified at the exact same time. "Why me?" he had asked. Voss smiled, a small, sad smile. "Because you never give up, Ryan, even when you should. That's exactly what we need if the worst happens." Back in the present, Ryan opened his eyes, pulled away from the memory. Captain Voss had died 6 months later in a battle far from Earth, protecting a supply convoy. Ryan had not been there. He had been on a secret training mission far outside the human system, learning to use the Ember Core, preparing for a day he hoped would never come. But that day had come anyway. He walked back to the control room and sat down at the main console. His fingers moved across old, familiar controls, checking the Ember Core's status. The reactor was stable, but weak, still recovering from the damage the ship suffered escaping Earth's destruction. It needed more time to reach full power. "Just a little longer," Ryan whispered to the machine as if it could hear him. "Just a little more time." He looked at the star map again. The Empire's capital, marked with the golden crown symbol, was still far away. Many weeks of travel at his ship's damaged speed. He had time. Time to heal his ship. Time to prepare. Time to plan. He also had time to remember everyone he had lost every single night alone in the dark. Meanwhile, far behind him, near the border of alien territory, the sensor data sent by the old scout Biexa finally reached someone who took it seriously. Her name was Commander Threx, a Kion officer, tall and made of gray stone-like skin, with deep orange eyes that missed nothing. She worked in Fleet Intelligence, a department responsible for analyzing unusual reports from across the Empire. Most of her job was boring: false alarms, equipment malfunctions, confused reports from tired soldiers. But when she opened BX's file, something felt different. She watched the sensor recordings carefully, frowning as she studied the shape of the damaged ship. She had fought in the human war too, many years ago as a young soldier. She had seen human ships before, up close in real battle. And this shape, despite the damage, was unmistakable. "This is a human warship," she said quietly to herself. She checked the report's date, then checked the official council announcement. The council declared humanity extinct on the same day this sensor data was recorded. The timing made her uncomfortable. She called a junior officer into her office. I need you to pull every report from the past 6 months mentioning unidentified ships or unusual signals anywhere near the border regions. Everything, even the ones marked as false alarms. The junior officer looked confused. Commander, that could be hundreds of reports. Then you'd better start now, Thray said firmly. 2 hours later, the officer returned with a large stack of files. Thray spent the rest of the night going through each one carefully. Most were nothing important. Space debris, equipment errors, confused readings from old sensors. But 3 reports caught her attention. 3 separate sightings over the past 6 months, all describing a similar object. A large damaged vessel moving slowly but steadily. Always in the same general direction. Always ignored. Always dismissed as debris or malfunction. Threx laid the 3 reports side by side and looked at the pattern. If she connected the locations on a star map, the path formed a clear line, a line that led directly toward the Empire's capital. Her orange eyes narrowed. "This isn't debris," she whispered. "This is a ship on a mission." She immediately began preparing a report for her superiors, but she paused before sending it. She thought about how the Council had celebrated just days ago, how proud everyone felt about ending the war, how Speaker Doran himself had declared victory in front of the entire galaxy. If she was wrong, she would look foolish, or worse, she would be accused of trying to create panic. But if she was right, and she said nothing, the consequences could be terrible. She made her decision. She sent the report. The report reached the desk of a busy fleet administrator named Yulo, a thrill like Fra, but older and far less curious. He was tired after a long week of paperwork following the Council's big announcement. He glanced at Threx's report for only a few seconds before setting it aside. "Probably nothing," he mumbled to himself. "Just an old officer trying to look important." He marked the report as low priority and moved on to the next file on his desk. Threx's warning, like BX's original sensor data, disappeared into the endless pile of galactic bureaucracy, unseen by anyone with the power to act. But not everyone ignored the warning signs. Fra, the young thrill diplomat who had felt uneasy during the extinction announcement, could not stop thinking about the strange signal she remembered from 3 months earlier. She decided to investigate on her own, quietly, without telling anyone. She used her diplomatic access to search old communication archives, looking for any unusual signals detected near human territory over the past year. It took her many hours searching through thousands of old files, most of them boring, routine reports. Then she found it. The same signal she remembered, weak and strange, recorded 3 months ago near the edge of the destroyed human system. She almost dismissed it just like everyone else had, but something made her look closer. She ran the signal through a translation program, one designed to decode old human communication frequencies from the war. It took a long time to process, but eventually words appeared on her screen. Broken, distorted, barely readable, but real. Last light reporting survived Earth's fall, Ember core intact. Proceeding to the rest of the message was corrupted, unreadable. But what Fra had already read was enough to make her hands shake. A human ship had survived. A ship with a weapon called the Ember core, and it had a destination. She stared at her screen for a long time, unsure what to do. If she reported this and she was wrong, her career would be over. Nobody wanted to hear that the great victory celebration was a mistake. But if she said nothing, and she was right, she thought about BX's sensor data, buried somewhere in Fleet Command's files. She thought about the celebrations still happening across the galaxy, everyone believing they were finally safe. She made a decision. She began writing an urgent message, addressed directly to Speaker Doran himself, bypassing the normal reporting system entirely. It was risky. It could get her in serious trouble. But she believed deep down that this was too important to ignore. While Fra worked through the night preparing her message, Ryan continued his slow journey through the emptiness of space, unaware that far behind him, a small handful of aliens were beginning to realize the truth. He spent his days repairing what he could of his damaged ship, using spare parts from sealed-off sections to fix critical systems. He spent his night sitting alone in the ship's small observation room, watching the stars, thinking about everyone he had lost. One night, unable to sleep, he opened an old recorded message on his ship's computer. It was a message from Captain Voss, recorded before her death, meant to be played only if the worst happened, Only if Earth fell, and Ryan became truly alone. Her face appeared on the screen, tired, but strong, exactly as he remembered her. Ryan, if you're watching this, it means Earth is gone, and I probably am too. I'm sorry. I wish I could be there with you. Ryan felt his throat tighten as he listened. But I need you to understand something important. You are not just a pilot anymore. You are the last piece of something bigger than yourself. You carry the memory of every human who ever lived, every person who ever loved, every dream anyone from Earth ever had. She paused, her eyes serious. The galaxy will think we're gone. They'll celebrate. They'll feel safe. But you and I both know, humans don't disappear quietly. We never have. So when you're ready, when the Ember Core is strong enough, you remind them exactly who they're dealing with. The message ended. Ryan sat in silence for a long time, staring at the blank screen. I will, Captain, he finally said, his voice steady, despite the tears in his eyes. I promise. Days later, the Ember Core reached 70% power. Still not fully ready, but strong enough to begin testing. Ryan ran a small diagnostic, firing a controlled burst of the weapon's energy at an empty asteroid nearby, just to confirm it still worked, after all the damage his ship had suffered. The result shocked even him. The asteroid, larger than his entire ship, was completely destroyed in a single blast. The Ember Core's strange energy tearing through solid rock as if it were nothing more than paper. Ryan stared at the empty space where the asteroid used to be, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and unease. This weapon was more powerful than he had realized, more powerful than even Captain Voss had explained. The scientist back on Earth must have made improvements before the end. Improvements nobody had time to fully explain to him. 70%, he said quietly to himself, looking at the reactor readout. Just wait until you're at full power. He set a new, more aggressive course toward the Empire's capital, increasing his ship's speed despite the risk to its damaged systems. He was done waiting patiently. He was done hiding in the shadows of space. Somewhere far ahead of him, an entire empire was celebrating a victory that had never truly happened. He intended to make sure they understood that very soon. Back at the Grand Hall, FRA's urgent message finally reached Speaker Doran's private office late at night. His assistant, unsure what to do with such an unusual request, decided to deliver it directly, interrupting Doran's rest. Doran read the message twice, his expression slowly changing from confusion to concern. A surviving human ship, a weapon called the Ember Core, a clear path toward the capital. He set the message down and stared out his window at the peaceful, celebrating city below him. For the first time since declaring victory, a small seed of doubt began growing in his mind. Get me, Commander Thrax, he said quietly to his assistant, and bring me every report about unidentified ships from the past 6 months. Immediately, his assistant hurried to obey, sensing the sudden change in his leader's mood. Doran looked back at Fra's message on his screen, reading the decoded human words one more time. Last light reporting. Survived Earth's fall. No, Doran whispered to himself, refusing to believe it. It's not possible. We destroyed them completely. But somewhere deep inside him, an old soldier's instinct, sharpened by 20 years of war, told him the celebrations across the galaxy might have started far too early. Speaker Doran did not sleep that night. He sat in his office, surrounded by files, reading report after report, his old soldier instincts fighting against everything he wanted to believe. By morning, he had made a decision. He called an emergency meeting, not of the full council, but of a small group of trusted military leaders. He did not want panic, not yet. He wanted answers first. Commander Threx arrived early, carrying her own files along with BX's original sensor data, which she had personally pulled from the ignored archive. Fra arrived too, nervous, unsure if she was about to be praised or punished for going around normal procedures. Doran stood at the head of a small table, looking tired but focused. Tell me everything, he said. Both of you. 3 spoke first, laying out the pattern of sightings across 6 months, the ignored reports, the consistent path leading toward the capital. Then Fra spoke, explaining the strange signal she found, the human words hidden inside it, the mention of something called the Ember Core. Doran listened silently, his face unreadable. When they finished, he was quiet for a long moment. So he finally said, while we celebrated in the Grand Hall, A human warship was already halfway through our territory, and nobody thought it was important enough to tell me. Nobody answered. Nobody wanted to. Fleet Command received 3 separate warnings, Doran continued, his voice growing harder. 3. And each time, someone decided it was not worth their attention. He turned to a large star map on the wall, tracing the path Threx had identified with his finger. It ended very close to their current position, closer than anyone in the room felt comfortable admitting. How is this possible? Doran asked quietly. We destroyed their planet. Our fleet reported 0 survivors. Maybe, Thray said carefully. This ship was never on Earth when it fell. Maybe it was somewhere else, hidden, waiting. Doran closed his eyes for a moment, thinking. He remembered something from years ago, an old military rumor about human ships being built for secret missions, ships that disappeared from records entirely. He had dismissed it as nothing important at the time. Now he wondered if he had been wrong. Prepare a response fleet, Doran said finally, quietly. I don't want a public panic. The Council just declared victory to the entire galaxy. If word gets out that a single human ship might still be alive, it will destroy everything we've built these past few days. How many ships, sir? Threx asked. Doran thought for a moment. It's 1 damaged ship alone. No support, no supply lines. Send 20 warships. That should be more than enough to end this quietly before it becomes a real problem. Threx hesitated. Sir, if I may, the reports describe strange energy readings from this ship's weapon system. Perhaps we should send more. Doran shook his head. 20 ships against 1 damaged vessel is already excessive, Commander. I won't waste more resources chasing a ghost story. Send the fleet. End this quickly. Quietly. Threx did not argue further, though something about the decision still worried her. She had seen the sensor data herself. She had a strange feeling that they were underestimating something important, but orders were orders, far ahead of the alien fleet being prepared to hunt him. Ryan continued pushing his damaged ship forward closer to the Empire's capital with every passing hour. The Ember Core was now at 85% power, glowing steadily inside the ship's core like a slow, patient heartbeat. He spent his days running system checks, repairing small damages, and studying old star maps his ship's computer still had stored, learning everything he could about the Empire's territory, its defenses, its capital planet. He learned the capital planet was called Victoria, home to the Empire's greatest leaders, its largest shipyards, and its most powerful defense systems. It was heavily protected, surrounded by defense stations and patrol fleets. Reaching it would not be easy, even for a stealthy approach. But Ryan was not planning a stealthy approach. He wanted them to see him coming. He wanted them to know exactly who was arriving and why. Late one night, while checking his ship's damaged sensors, an alarm suddenly blared through the control room. Ryan jumped up from his seat, immediately alert. Report, he said to his ship's computer. Multiple vessels detected, the computer replied in its calm mechanical voice. 20 ships, alien military class, approaching from ahead at high speed. Ryan looked at the screen, watching 20 red dots appear on his star map, moving directly toward him in a tight formation. His heart began beating faster, not from fear, but from something closer to excitement. They found us, he said quietly. He sat back down at the controls, running quick calculations. 20 enemy warships against his single damaged vessel. Normally it would be an impossible fight, but Ryan was not thinking about normal fights anymore. Ember Core status, he said. 85% power, the computer replied. Estimated full power in 6 hours. Ryan looked at the approaching fleet on his screen, then checked their estimated arrival time. 4 hours they would reach him before the Ember Core finished charging. He allowed himself a small, tired smile. Then we'll just have to make do with 85%. The alien fleet, led by a stern commander named Zarn, a Voron with sharp features and cold eyes, approached the damaged human warship with confidence. Zarn had fought in the human war too many years ago, but he had never truly believed the stories about human toughness. He believed the humans had simply gotten lucky over and over, until their luck finally ran out at Earth. Single target confirmed, reported his sensor officer. Heavily damaged. Weapon systems appear mostly non-functional, except for one unidentified energy source in the ship's core. Zar nodded, unimpressed. 1 damaged ship. This should not take long. Prepare to surround and disable it. We'll bring it back for study. His fleet spread into a wide formation around the human warship. 20 powerful vessels closing in from every direction, weapons charged and ready. From their perspective, this was simply cleanup work, nothing more than confirming the extinction the Council had already declared. Rand watched them approach on his screen, calm and focused. He knew he could not outrun 20 ships. He knew he could not outmaneuver them all, but he had one advantage. They did not understand. "Let's give them a proper welcome," he said quietly, activating his ship's remaining weapons. The battle began the moment the alien fleet came within firing range. 20 ships opened fire simultaneously, their combined weapons filling space around Last Light with bright streaks of energy. Ryan's ship shook violently as several shots struck its already damaged hull, alarms blaring throughout the ship. But instead of trying to escape, Ryan did something the alien fleet never expected. He turned his ship directly toward the incoming fire and activated the Ember Core. The strange crystal weapon inside his ship's core began glowing brightly, absorbing the very energy being fired at him. Instead of exploding, his damaged hull seemed to shimmer, the incoming alien weapons fire being pulled inward, gathered, stored. "What is that?" Zarn shouted from his command ship, watching his sensors show impossible readings. "The target isn't taking damage, it's absorbing our fire." His sensor officer looked equally confused. "Sir, energy levels inside the target vessel are rising rapidly. I don't understand this technology." Zarn's confidence began to waver slightly. "Continue firing. Overwhelm it with numbers." The alien fleet increased its attack, all 20 ships firing continuously at the human warship. Ryan gritted his teeth as his ship shook and groaned under the assault. The Ember Core absorbing everything thrown at it, growing brighter and brighter with every passing second. Core power at 95%, his ship's computer announced, approaching critical capacity. Ryan watched the numbers climb, feeling the tension building inside his own chest, matching the growing energy of the weapon. He needed just a little more, 98%. The alien fleet continued its assault, unaware that every shot they fired was making their enemy stronger, not weaker. 100%, the computer finally announced. Ember Core fully charged. Ryan took a deep breath, gripping the controls tightly. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's show them what humanity built." He released the stored energy in a single massive counterattack, a wide burst of golden white light that expanded outward from his ship in every direction, striking every single alien vessel in the surrounding formation simultaneously. The result was devastating. 5 alien ships were destroyed instantly, their hulls torn apart by the sudden release of concentrated energy. 10 more ships suffered severe damage, their shields collapsing, systems failing, crews thrown into chaos. Only 5 ships remained relatively unharmed, positioned at the very edge of the blast radius. Inside his command ship, Zarn stared at his monitors in complete shock, watching 2/3 of his fleet crippled or destroyed in a single moment. That's not possible," he stammered, his earlier confidence completely shattered. "One ship cannot do this much damage." "Sir," his sensor officer said, voice shaking, "the human vessel is still active, and it's turning toward us." Zarn watched his screen as the damaged but very much alive human warship began moving toward his remaining ships, its weapon systems glowing with dangerous energy once again, though not as bright as before. "All remaining ships, retreat," Zarn shouted, panic finally breaking through his cold demeanor. "Retreat immediately. Send an emergency signal to Fleet Command. We need reinforcements now." The 5 surviving alien ships turned and fled, abandoning their crippled companions, racing back toward the capital as fast as their engines could carry them. Ryan watched them retreat on his screen, breathing heavily, exhausted from the intense battle, but satisfied he did not chase them. His ship needed time to recover, and the Ember Core needed time to recharge fully. But he had made his point clearly enough. "That's 20 ships," he said quietly to himself, looking at the wreckage floating silently around him. 19 more to go before I reach the capital, apparently." He allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction before turning his attention back to repairing his ship, preparing for the next stage of his journey. Sarn's emergency signal reached Dorn's office within the hour, and this time, there was no ignoring it, no dismissing it as a false alarm. Dorn read the report with growing horror, his hands trembling slightly as he processed the numbers. 15 ships destroyed or crippled, 5 ships retreating in panic, all from a single human vessel. He called Threx and Fira back into his office immediately, along with several other senior officers who had previously dismissed the human threat as nothing important. "Explain this to me," Doran said, throwing the report onto the table in front of them. "Explain how one damaged ship destroyed 15 of our warships." Nobody had a good answer. The technology described in Zarn's report, this strange weapon that absorbed enemy fire and turned it into a devastating counterattack, was unlike anything in their records. Threx studied the report carefully, her expression grim. "This matches what the human diplomat found in that decoded signal. The Ember Core. It seems this weapon is exactly as dangerous as we feared. Perhaps even more so. We underestimated them," Fra said quietly, almost to herself. "We celebrated too early." Doran sat down heavily in his chair, feeling the weight of his earlier decision pressing down on him. He had sent 20 ships to quietly end what he believed was a minor problem. Instead, he had lost most of them and confirmed that a genuine threat was heading directly for his empire's most important planet. "How long until this ship reaches Vexoria?" he asked. Threx checked the star map, calculating the human vessel's current speed and trajectory. "At its current pace, approximately 2 weeks, sir. Though, it may need time to repair damage from this battle, which could delay its arrival." Doran rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building behind his eyes. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to prepare Vexora's defenses against a single ship that had just destroyed 15 warships with ease. "We cannot let this become public knowledge," Doran said finally. "Not yet. If the galaxy learns that a human ship survived and defeated an entire fleet, it will destroy everything we've worked to build. The trust between species, the peace we just declared, everything. Sir, with respect," Thray said carefully. "Perhaps secrecy is not the answer here. Perhaps we need every available resource, every fleet prepared for what's coming." Doran was silent for a long moment, weighing her words carefully. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Prepare Vexoria's full defense fleet," he said. "Every warship station near the capital on high alert immediately. I want the strongest defense line this empire has ever assembled, ready before that ship arrives." "And the public announcement, sir?" Fra asked. Doran looked at her, his expression tired and conflicted. "Say nothing for now. Let the galaxy continue celebrating a little longer. If we're fortunate, our defense fleet will end this quietly, and nobody outside this room will ever need to know how close we came to a much larger problem." He looked back at the star map at the small marker representing Ryan's ship, slowly making its way toward Vexoria. "But if we're wrong," he said quietly, almost to himself, "if this human reaches the capital and our defenses failed too." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Everyone in the room understood exactly what he meant. 2 weeks later, repairs mostly complete, the Ember Core once again reaching full power. Ryan guided his damaged but determined warship past the last outer defense stations of the Empire's territory. Ahead of him, glowing brightly against the darkness of space. He could see it for the first time. Vexoria, the Empire's capital, the heart of everything responsible for Earth's destruction. He also saw something else. Hundreds of warships gathered in a massive defensive formation around the planet. Their combined firepower more than enough to concern even the most confident pilot. Ryan stared at the overwhelming force waiting for him, feeling a strange calm settle over his mind. He was one ship, badly damaged, against an entire empire's assembled defense fleet. He thought about Captain Voss's final message. He thought about everyone on Earth who never got the chance to see this moment. He thought about the promise he made, and the anger that had carried him this far. "All right," he said quietly, gripping his ship's controls tightly, watching the massive defense fleet ahead of him. "Let's finish this." His damaged warship, the last remnant of humanity's once great fleet, began accelerating directly toward the largest concentration of enemy ships the galaxy had ever assembled. Vexoria shone like a jewel in the darkness of space. A beautiful planet covered in golden cities and tall silver towers. It was the pride of the Empire, home to the greatest leaders, the finest scientists, and the largest shipyards in the galaxy. For 1,000 years, no enemy had ever come close enough to threaten it. That was about to change. Around the planet, the Empire's full defense fleet waited in tight formation. 300 warships gathered from every corner of the Empire, their weapons charged, their crews alert. This was the largest defensive force ever assembled in galactic history, built in just 2 weeks, born from fear of a single damaged human ship. At the center of the fleet stood the command ship, the Vexor's Pride, a massive vessel larger than any other in the formation. Inside its command center, Speaker Duran himself stood beside Commander Threx, watching the main screen with tense anticipation. He had left the Grand Hall for the first time in years to personally oversee this defense, understanding just how important this moment truly was. Sensor range confirmed, an officer announced. Target vessel entering outer detection range. ETA to defense line, 40 minutes. Doran felt his hands tighten behind his back. 40 minutes, until everything he had built, everything the Empire had celebrated just weeks ago, would be tested against a single human ship. Status of all fleet divisions? Threx asked, her orange eyes fixed on the tactical display. All 300 ships report ready, Commander, the officer replied, weapons charged, shields at full power. Threx nodded, though her expression remained grim. She had studied every detail of the previous battle, every piece of data from Zarn's destroyed fleet, trying to understand the Ember Corps' true capabilities. She had come to one important conclusion. This weapon's power seemed to grow stronger the more enemy fire it absorbed. Sir, she said quietly to Doran, I recommend we do not simply overwhelm the target with continuous fire as Commander Zarn attempted. This may only make the weapon stronger. Doran turned to her, his expression tired but attentive. What do you suggest instead? Coordinated strikes, Threx explained, short, powerful bursts from multiple directions simultaneously, followed by pauses to prevent the weapon from absorbing continuous energy. We overwhelm its capacity to absorb, rather than feeding it a steady stream. Doran considered this carefully. It was a reasonable strategy born from hard lessons learned at great cost. Implement it, he said. Pass the new tactics to all fleet divisions immediately. Threx began relaying the new orders across the fleet, while Doran turned back to the main screen, watching a small blinking dot representing Ryan's ship grow slowly closer. Aboard Last Light, Ryan watched the massive defense fleet appear on his own screen. 300 warships arranged in a formation so large, it seemed to stretch endlessly across space. His hands remained steady on the controls, though his heart pounded heavily in his chest. 300 ships, he said quietly, almost laughing at the impossible number. They really weren't taking any chances this time. His ship's computer analyzed the formation, calculating odds that made even Ryan's determined resolve waver slightly. Survival probability extremely low, the computer reported flatly. Ryan allowed himself a tired, small smile. Yeah, I figured as much. He thought about turning back, about finding somewhere quiet to hide, to survive a little longer, but he immediately dismissed the thought. There was nowhere left for him to go, no home to return to, no family waiting. Turning back now would mean nothing, except delaying an ending that was always coming. He opened Captain Voss's final recorded message one more time, watching her tired but strong face appear on his screen. When you're ready, when the Ember Corps is strong enough, you remind them exactly who they're dealing with. Ryan closed the message and took a deep breath, studying himself. I'm ready, Captain, he said quietly. He checked the Ember Corps' readout one final time. Full power, glowing steadily, patiently waiting. He thought about his family, faces he would never see again. He thought about Earth's blue skies, green fields, places he would never walk again. He thought about every person who had ever lived and died on that small, beautiful planet. Now nothing but ash and memory. This is for all of you, he whispered. He pushed his damaged ship forward, directly toward the largest defensive fleet the galaxy had ever assembled. The battle began the moment Ryan crossed into weapons range. True to Threx's new strategy, the alien fleet did not simply unleash continuous fire. Instead, groups of 10 ships took turns firing short, powerful bursts from different angles, then pausing before the next group continued the assault. Ryan's ship shook violently under the coordinated attack, alarms blaring as sections of his already damaged hull began failing entirely. He gritted his teeth, focusing entirely on keeping his ship moving forward, weaving as best he could between incoming attacks. Ember Core absorption rate slowing, his computer reported. New enemy tactic is limiting energy transfer efficiency. Ryan understood immediately what was happening. They had learned from the previous battle. They were preventing the weapon from building up its devastating counterattack as easily as before. Clever, he muttered, gripping his controls tightly as another wave of enemy fire struck his ship. Guess I'll have to work harder then. He began flying more aggressively, pushing his damaged engines beyond safe limits, moving directly into the heart of the enemy formation, instead of remaining at a distance. If he could not simply absorb their fire from afar, he would force them into close combat, where his weapons' effects would be harder to control. The alien commanders watched in alarm as the human ship abandoned caution entirely, plunging directly into the center of their formation. "He's insane," one officer shouted from the command ship. "He'll be destroyed within seconds at this range." Doran watched the tactical display closely, his old soldier instincts recognizing something the younger officers did not. "No," he said quietly. "He's not insane. He's desperate, and desperate humans are the most dangerous kind." Inside the enemy formation, surrounded on all sides, Ryan activated the Ember Core once more, releasing a smaller but still powerful burst of absorbed energy directly at the ships closest to him. 3 more alien vessels were destroyed instantly, their wreckage scattering through the crowded formation, causing chaos among nearby ships, trying to avoid collision. "Direct hits confirmed," Ryan's computer reported. Enemy formation integrity beginning to weaken. Ryan pressed forward, using the confusion to his advantage, weaving between damaged and retreating ships, striking wherever he found opportunity. His own ship continued taking damage, warning lights flashing across every console, but he refused to stop. The battle raged on for nearly 20 minutes, longer than anyone on either side expected. Ryan's ship grew more damaged with every passing moment, but so did the alien fleet formation, chaos spreading as coordinated tactics broke down under the unpredictable, aggressive human pilots' relentless attacks. By the time Ryan finally broke through the outer defense line, nearly 50 alien ships had been destroyed or crippled, and his own ship was barely holding together. Sparks flying from damaged consoles, warning alarms blaring constantly throughout what remained of the vessel. "Hull integrity at 23%, the computer warned. Multiple critical system failures detected." Ryan ignored the warnings, focusing entirely on the golden planet growing larger ahead of him. Vexoria, the Empire's heart. So close now he could see individual cities glowing on its surface. "Almost there," he whispered, blood trickling from a cut above his eyebrow, caused by debris thrown loose during the intense battle. Almost there. Aboard the Vexor's Pride, Doran watched with growing disbelief as the human ship continued advancing, despite overwhelming losses inflicted upon his fleet. 50 ships destroyed. 50 ships against a single badly damaged vessel that should have been destroyed within minutes. "Commander," he said, his voice tight with tension. "Concentrate every remaining ship directly between the target and the capital. Do not let it reach Vexoria." Threx relayed the orders immediately, watching as the remaining 250 ships began converging into a tight defensive wall between Ryan's approaching vessel and the golden planet behind them. "Sir," Thray said quietly, studying the tactical readouts with growing concern. "His weapon system's power output continues increasing with every engagement. If he breaks through this final defensive line, our ground defenses may not be sufficient to stop him." Doran said nothing, staring silently at the screen, watching the small, damaged human ship approach the massive wall of alien warships standing between him and his final destination. Ryan faced the final defensive wall. 250 ships arranged tightly together, their combined weapons more than enough to destroy his crippled vessel many times over. His ship's computer calculated survival odds automatically, displaying numbers so low they were barely worth acknowledging. He thought for just a moment about everything that had led him to this point. Captain Voss's promise, the long, lonely months traveling through empty space, the anger, the grief, the purpose that had carried him this far. He also thought unexpectedly about hope. Not hope for his own survival, he understood that was unlikely now, but hope that his actions here would mean something. Hope that somewhere, somehow, the galaxy would remember that humanity had existed, had fought, had refused to disappear quietly into history. "Ember Core status," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. 100% power, fully charged from recent engagements, the computer replied. Ryan smiled faintly, blood still trickling down his face, his hands steady on the controls, despite everything his damaged ship had endured. "Then let's finish what we started." He pushed his ship forward one final time, directly toward the center of the defensive wall, weapon systems glowing brighter than they ever had before. The Ember Cores stored energy from countless absorbed attacks, finally ready for release. The alien fleet opened fire simultaneously, every remaining ship unleashing everything they had at the approaching human vessel. Space itself seemed to light up with the intensity of combined weapons fire, a storm of energy converging on a single small, determined ship. Ryan released the Ember Core's full power at the exact same moment. The resulting explosion was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. A massive wave of golden-white energy expanded outward in every direction, tearing through the tightly packed alien formation with devastating force. Ships were destroyed by the dozens, their hulls torn apart, their crews thrown into chaos as the shockwave rippled through the entire defensive wall aboard the Vexor's Pride. Alarms blared as the shockwave struck even the command ship itself, throwing officers from their stations, sparks flying from overloaded systems. Doran gripped a nearby console tightly, watching in stunned silence as more than half his remaining fleet was destroyed or crippled in a single massive burst of energy. When the light finally faded and the chaos began to settle, the tactical display showed a devastating picture. Nearly 200 ships destroyed or disabled. The defensive wall meant to be impenetrable, shattered completely. And somewhere in the wreckage, still moving, barely holding together, Ryan's ship continued its journey, directly toward Vexoria. Impossible, Doran whispered, staring at the screen in complete disbelief. That's not possible. Threx, injured slightly from the shockwave, pulled herself back to her station, checking the remaining fleet status with shaking hands. Sir, we have less than 30 ships remaining combat capable. The target vessel is still advancing toward the capital. Doran stared at the screen for a long moment, watching the small, damaged human ship continue its relentless approach, undeterred by everything his empire had thrown against it. He thought about the 20 years of war, the destruction of Earth, the celebrations just weeks ago, believing this threat was finally over. He understood in that moment with painful clarity exactly how badly they had underestimated humanity. All remaining ships, he said quietly, his voice heavy with resignation. Concentrate everything on the target. This is our final line of defense. The remaining 30 ships converged desperately around Ryan's approaching vessel, unleashing everything they had left. Ryan's ship shook violently under the assault, his hull integrity dropping to single digits. Warning systems failing one by one throughout his dying vessel. Hull integrity critical, the computer warned, its voice beginning to distort from damage. Life support failing. Recommend immediate. The computer's voice cut off entirely as another system failed. Ryan ignored the warnings. Blood now flowing freely from multiple wounds, his vision beginning to blur from exhaustion and injury. He kept his hands steady on the controls, pushing his dying ship forward through the storm of enemy fire. Vexoria filled his entire view screen now, close enough that he could see the Empire's largest shipyard, the very facility responsible for building the fleet that had destroyed Earth. This is for Earth, he whispered, his voice barely audible even to himself. This is for everyone we lost. He guided his ship directly into the heart of the shipyard, activating one final desperate release of the Ember Core's remaining energy. A massive explosion that tore through the facility's core reactor, triggering a chain reaction that spread rapidly through the entire structure. The shipyard, the Empire's greatest source of military power, erupted into a massive explosion, visible even from the planet's surface, destroying decades of accumulated warships, resources, and infrastructure in a matter of seconds. Ryan's ship, caught at the very center of the explosion, was consumed entirely by the devastating blast. Silence fell across what remained of the Empire's fleet. Doran stood motionless in the command center, staring at the massive fireball where the shipyard used to be. Unable to process the scale of destruction one single determined human had managed to inflict. Sir, Thray said quietly, her voice shaking slightly. The target vessel, it's gone. Destroyed in the shipyard explosion. Doran said nothing for a long moment, simply staring at the devastation on his screen. Nearly 200 ships lost. The Empire's greatest shipyard completely destroyed. All caused by a single pilot alone, in a badly damaged vessel that should have been destroyed weeks ago. He knew, Doran finally said quietly. He knew he wouldn't survive, and he did this anyway. Threx did not respond immediately, understanding the weight behind her leader's words. They had faced an enemy who fought not for victory, not for survival, but for something deeper. something the Empire was only now beginning to truly understand. Hours later, as emergency crews worked desperately to control the fires still burning across the destroyed shipyard, a faint signal suddenly appeared on long-range communication systems across the Empire's territory and quickly spread outward across the entire galaxy. It was a recorded message, simple and short, broadcast from a source that could no longer be traced, activated automatically by systems Ryan had prepared weeks earlier in case his mission succeeded or failed. His voice, tired but steady, echoed across 1,000 worlds simultaneously. This message is for the Galactic Council, and for every species listening. You declared humanity extinct. You celebrated our destruction. You were wrong. Across the galaxy, in homes, offices, and public spaces, alien citizens paused whatever they were doing, listening to this impossible broadcast with confusion and growing unease. My name doesn't matter anymore. What matters is this: I am not the last human, because we deserve to survive more than anyone else. I am the last human, because humans never stop fighting, even when everything is lost, even when hope seems impossible. Doran listened to the broadcast from his command ship, his expression unreadable, surrounded by the wreckage of his once proud defense fleet. You destroyed our planet. You thought that was the end of our story. But species are not just planets, and they are not just numbers. We are memory. We are will. We are the refusal to disappear quietly, no matter how impossible the odds. The message paused for a moment, as if the speaker was gathering strength for his final words. Humanity is not extinct. We are simply waiting. Somewhere someday we will return. And when we do, remember this day. Remember what one human alone was capable of, and imagine what we will do when we are many again. The broadcast ended abruptly, leaving nothing behind except silence, and a message that would be remembered across 1,000 worlds for generations to come. In the Grand Hall, where celebrations had filled the halls with joy and relief just weeks before, silence now reigned. Speaker Doran stood once again at the center of the great chamber. But this time, no cheers greeted him, no celebration filled the air. He looked out at the gathered leaders, their faces uncertain, afraid, forced to confront a truth none of them wanted to accept. I stood in this very hall, Doran said slowly, and declared humanity extinct. I was wrong. Murmurs spread through the crowd, uncertainty and fear replacing the confidence that had filled this room just weeks before. One human alone, injured, without support or reinforcement, destroyed nearly 200 of our warships and our greatest shipyard before finally falling, Doran continued. If one human alone could accomplish this much, we must ask ourselves an important question. He paused, looking directly at the assembled leaders, his voice heavy with the weight of what he was about to say. What happens if there are more? Nobody in the hall had an answer. Somewhere far across the galaxy, hidden among countless stars, the truth of that question remained unknown, waiting silently in the darkness for its moment to be revealed. The galaxy believed the war was finally over. They were about to learn just how wrong they truly were. 3 months passed since the destruction of Vexoria's shipyard. 3 months since Ryan Cole's final broadcast echoed across 1,000 worlds. 3 months since Speaker Doran stood in the Grand Hall and admitted in front of the entire galaxy that he had been wrong. The galaxy was a different place now. The celebrations had long stopped. In their place, something new had taken root. Fear mixed with confusion, mixed with a strange, uneasy respect for an enemy everyone had believed was gone forever. Across 1,000 worlds, Ryan's final words had spread like wildfire, translated into hundreds of alien languages, discussed in every corner of civilized space. Humanity is not extinct. We are simply waiting. Nobody knew what those words truly meant. Nobody knew if more humans existed somewhere hidden, waiting for their moment. But everyone from the highest council leader to the youngest child on the most distant colony world now understood one simple truth. Humans did not disappear quietly. Not ever. In the Grand Hall, the mood was nothing like it had been 3 months earlier. Where there had once been celebration and joy, now there was tension, careful words, and constant worry. Speaker Doran stood before the assembled council once again, but this time his voice carried none of the pride it once had. 6 weeks ago, Doran said, addressing the gathered leaders, I ordered a full investigation into every human military record we captured during the war. I wanted answers. I wanted to know if what that pilot said was true, if more humans could still be alive somewhere. The hall was silent. Every alien leader listening carefully. None of the restless energy from 3 months before remaining today. Doran continued. Commander Threx will present what we found. Threx stepped forward, standing tall despite the exhaustion clearly visible on her stone-gray face. She had spent the past 6 weeks working almost without rest, determined to find the truth. During the final years of the war, Threx began. Human Command developed a classified program known as the Ember Core Initiative. We already know of one ship built under this program, Last Light, the vessel that attacked Vexoria. But our investigation uncovered something else. She activated a large screen behind her, showing old damaged data files recovered from destroyed human military servers captured during the war's final battles. The program was not designed to build a single ship. 3 said it was designed to build a fleet. A hidden fleet kept secret even from most human commanders meant to survive in case Earth fell. Murmurs spread through the hall. Alien leaders shifting uncomfortably in their seats. How many ships? Doran asked quietly, though something in his expression suggested he already feared the answer. Threx paused before answering. According to the recovered records, the program intended to build 12 ships total, each with its own Ember Core weapon system, each with a hand-picked pilot and small crew, hidden in different locations across human territory before Earth's destruction. The hall erupted into anxious whispers. 12 ships. If even half of them survived, the galaxy could be facing far more than the single desperate pilot who had already caused so much devastation. Do we know how many were actually completed? A Kion leader asked from the crowd, his stone voice heavy with concern. Unfortunately, no, Threx admitted. The records are incomplete, damaged during Earth's final battle. We know Last Light was completed and deployed. Beyond that, we cannot confirm how many others reached completion, or where they might currently be located. Doran rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of this new information pressing down on him. So we could be facing anywhere between 1 and 11 more ships, each potentially as dangerous as the one that nearly destroyed Vexoria. That is correct, sir, Thray said grimly. The hall fell into uneasy silence, every leader present now facing an uncomfortable truth. The war they believed had ended 3 months ago might not be over at all. Far away from the Grand Hall, in a distant, quiet region of space, rarely visited by alien patrols, a small hidden asteroid base drifted silently among the rocks. From the outside, it looked like nothing more than ordinary space debris, carefully disguised to avoid detection by even the most advanced sensors. Inside, hidden beneath layers of rock and metal, a small human outpost had survived undetected since Earth's destruction, home to a group of survivors nobody in the galaxy knew existed. A woman named Maya Chen sat in the outpost's small control room, staring at an old damaged screen, showing a recording that had been replaying constantly for the past 3 months. Ryan Cole's final broadcast, captured by the outpost's hidden receivers, just like every other corner of the galaxy. She had watched it so many times, she had memorized every word, every pause, every note of exhaustion and determination in his voice. Behind her, an older man named Commander Reyes entered the room quietly, his gray hair and tired eyes showing the weight of years spent in hiding, protecting the small group of survivors under his care. "You've watched that again," he said. Not really a question. Maya nodded, not turning away from the screen. "He did it, Commander. He actually did it. He made them afraid." Reyes walked closer, watching the frozen image of Ryan's face on the screen, a face neither of them had ever met in person, but felt they knew intimately after months of listening to his final words. "He also died doing it," Reyes said quietly. "Every soul on that ship was lost. We should remember that too." Maya finally turned to look at him, her eyes fierce with determination. "I know, but he bought us something valuable, Commander. Confusion, fear, time. The Empire is searching for more ships now, spreading their resources, thin, distracted, uncertain. This is our chance." Reyes was quiet for a long moment, considering her words carefully. He had led this small group of survivors for 3 years now, ever since their own ship, a smaller vessel called Horizon's Hope, had barely escaped Earth's destruction. With only 40 survivors aboard, they had spent every day since hiding, repairing, waiting, uncertain what to do next. Our ship isn't ready, Reyes said finally. Horizon's Hope doesn't have an Ember core. We don't have Ryan's kind of weapon. No, Maya agreed. But we have something else. We have information. We have time to prepare, unlike he did. And we have proof now that one ship, even without perfect preparation, can shake an entire empire to its core. Reyes looked back at the frozen image on the screen. Ryan's tired but determined face, forever preserved in that final moment of defiance. What are you suggesting? He asked, though he suspected he already knew. I'm suggesting we stop hiding, Maya said firmly. I'm suggesting we finish what he started. Not recklessly, not alone, but carefully together, as more than just one desperate pilot. Reyes remained silent for a long moment, weighing the risks against the small, fragile hope Maya's words carried. 40 survivors, 40 lives he had sworn to protect above everything else. But he also remembered Captain Voss's original vision for the Ember Core program. A vision meant to give humanity a real chance at survival, not just endless hiding in the shadows of space. Show me what you're thinking, he said finally. Maya smiled, the first genuine smile Reyes had seen from her in months, and pulled up a series of old files she had been secretly compiling since Ryan's broadcast first reached their hidden outpost. Back in the Grand Hall, the council meeting continued late into the evening, growing more heated and anxious with every passing hour. Fra, now promoted to a senior advisory position following her earlier warnings about Ryan's ship, stood near the back of the hall, watching the debate unfold with careful attention. We need to increase security across every major world, one alien leader argued forcefully. Full military presence everywhere immediately. That will only spread panic further, another countered. We already lost the trust of a dozen border worlds after news of Vexoria spread. More military presence will only make things worse. The arguments continued back and forth, different species offering different solutions, none of them reaching any clear agreement. Doran listened to it all with growing frustration, understanding that fear was clouding everyone's judgment, including perhaps his own. Finally, he raised his hand, calling for silence once again. We are missing the point entirely, he said, his voice carrying clearly across the tense hall. We spent 20 years fighting humanity as an enemy to be destroyed. That approach nearly cost us everything, and in the end, it may have created exactly the kind of desperate, dangerous resistance we now fear. The hall grew quiet, listening carefully to their leader's words. Perhaps, Dorn continued slowly, it is time we consider a different approach entirely. What are you suggesting? Threx asked, genuinely curiously. Doran took a deep breath before answering. I am suggesting that if more humans do exist somewhere in this galaxy, hunting them down, treating them as monsters to be destroyed will only lead to more Vexoras, more devastation, more losses on both sides. He paused, looking around the hall at the uncertain faces watching him. Perhaps instead we should try to find them first. Not with warships and weapons, but with an offer of peace. A chance to end this cycle of destruction, before it claims more lives, human and alien alike. The hall erupted into fierce debate once again. Some leaders immediately supportive of this new direction, others furious at the suggestion of extending any kindness toward a species that had just destroyed one of their greatest shipyards. Fra watched the chaos unfold, feeling a strange mixture of hope and worry building inside her. She thought about the decoded message she had found months ago, the desperate words of a lone human pilot who had sacrificed everything for a species he believed still had a chance at survival. She wondered quietly if peace was truly still possible, after everything that had happened, or if the wounds from 20 years of war followed by Vexoria's devastating attack had already grown too deep to heal. Meanwhile, at the hidden asteroid base, Maya worked tirelessly alongside Commander Reyes and a small team of engineers, studying every piece of information they had gathered about Ryan's mission, the Ember Core technology, and the current state of galactic tension following Vexoria's destruction. According to the data we've intercepted, Maya explained, showing Rye as a series of star charts on their outpost's main screen, the Empire has pulled back nearly 40% of their border patrol fleets, redirecting them toward defending major population centers, afraid of another surprise attack. Reyes studied the charts carefully, recognizing the strategic opportunity this created. Their border regions are exposed, he said slowly. undefended. Exactly, Maya said. If there are other ships out there, other survivors like us, this could be our chance to find them, to reach them before the Empire does. And if the Empire finds them first, Reyes asked. Maya's expression grew serious. Then we need to move quickly and carefully. We're not the only ones searching, Commander. Word of Ryan's broadcast has spread everywhere. Every survivor group still hiding out there has heard those words by now. Some of them may already be moving, just like we're considering. Reyes rubbed his tired eyes, feeling the enormous weight of the decision before him. Stay hidden, safe, but alone forever. Or reach out into a galaxy that had so recently sworn to destroy every human alive, hoping to find others like themselves, hoping the Empire's fear might create an opportunity for something better than endless war. Prepare Horizon's hope for departure, he said finally, his voice steady despite the risk, quietly. We're not going in blind like Ryan did. We're going to find our people first, build something stronger, before we ever consider confronting the Empire directly. Maya nodded, relief and determination mixing clearly in her expression. I'll start plotting possible survivor locations based on old evacuation records from before Earth fell. As she began her work, Reyes looked once more at the frozen image of Ryan Cole, still displayed on their monitor, his tired, determined face, forever remembered as the spark that changed everything. Thank you, Reyes whispered quietly to the image, for giving us this chance. Weeks later, tension across the galaxy remained high, though no further human ships had appeared, and the Council's fierce debate over how to proceed continued without clear resolution. Some worlds pushed for increased military preparation. Others quietly began exploring Dorn's suggestion of seeking peaceful contact, hoping to avoid repeating the devastating cycle of violence that had already cost so many lives. In the middle of this uncertainty, a small, unremarkable supply ship, traveling through a quiet border region, suddenly detected something unusual on its sensors. A weak signal, barely detectable, coming from a small, unremarkable asteroid field nobody had ever paid much attention to before. The supply ship's captain, a curious young thrill named Kova, decided to investigate, more out of boredom than any real expectation of finding something important. As his ship approached the asteroid field carefully, his sensors picked up something that made his breath catch in his throat. Human life signs. Multiple human life signs coming from somewhere hidden deep within the rocky debris. Kova stared at his sensor readings for a long moment, hands trembling slightly, uncertain what to do next. He remembered Ryan's broadcast, remembered Vexoria's devastation, remembered every warning about the danger humans could pose. But he also remembered Speaker Doran's recent words in the Grand Hall broadcast across the galaxy just days earlier, suggesting a new path forward, one built on understanding, rather than destruction. Kova made his decision. Instead of reporting immediately to military command as protocol demanded, he opened a careful, cautious communication channel toward the hidden signal, unsure if anyone would even respond, unsure what he might be walking into. "This is civilian trader vessel Wandering Star," he said slowly, his voice careful and calm. "I mean no harm. I'm requesting peaceful contact if anyone can hear this message." For a long, tense moment, there was only silence. Then faintly, a voice answered back, cautious and uncertain, but undeniably human. "Wandering Star, this is Horizon's Hope. We hear you. Please state your intentions clearly." Kova felt his heart racing, understanding immediately the enormous significance of what was happening. He was not just talking to some unknown enemy ship. He was making first peaceful contact with survivors from a species the entire galaxy believed had been completely destroyed. "My intentions are peaceful," Kova said carefully, choosing his words with great care. "I've heard the broadcast. I understand what happened at Victoria. I don't want more violence. I just want to understand. I want to know if peace between our people is still possible." Another long silence followed before Commander Reyes's tired but hopeful voice finally responded. "We want the same thing," Reyes said quietly. "We've wanted peace since the very beginning of this terrible war. Perhaps finally, there's a chance for both our peoples to find it." News of this unexpected peaceful contact reached the Grand Hall within hours, spreading quickly among council leaders, still deeply divided over how to handle the possibility of surviving humans. Some leaders reacted with fear and suspicion, demanding immediate military intervention. Others, including Doran himself, saw this as exactly the opportunity he had hoped for. "This is our chance," Doran said firmly, addressing the council once again. "A chance to prove that peace is possible, that we don't need to repeat the mistakes of the past 20 years. Threx, standing beside him, nodded in careful agreement, though her expression remained cautious. "It's a delicate situation, sir. One wrong move from either side could easily reignite the entire conflict. I understand the risk," Doran said, "but I also understand the alternative. More Vexoras, more devastation, more lives lost on both sides for a war that perhaps never needed to happen in the first place." Fra, listening carefully from her position near the council leaders, felt a small, cautious flicker of hope building inside her chest. The first genuine hope she had felt since this entire crisis began months earlier. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Doran turned to look at her, his expression serious but determined. "Now," he said, "we send a peaceful delegation to meet these survivors directly, carefully, respectfully. We try for the first time in 20 years to end this cycle of destruction through understanding, rather than more warships and weapons." He paused, looking around at the uncertain faces still filling the grand hall. Ryan Cole gave everything he had to prove that humanity would not disappear quietly. Doran said, "Perhaps it's time we prove that we're willing to listen before more lives, human and alien alike, are lost to a war that has already caused far too much pain, far away." Aboard Horizon's Hope, Maya and Commander Reyes prepared carefully for their first direct meeting with alien representatives. Uncertain what the future held, but hopeful for the first time in years that survival might not require constant hiding and fear. Maya looked once more at the recording of Ryan's final broadcast, still playing quietly in the background, his tired but determined voice echoing softly through their small ship. "We are simply waiting," his recorded voice said one final time. "Somewhere, someday we will return." Mia smiled softly, feeling the weight of his sacrifice and the fragile hope it had created settling gently over her heart. "We're here, Ryan," she whispered quietly. "We're still here, and maybe, just maybe, we won't have to fight alone anymore." Outside her ship's small window, the vast darkness of space stretched endlessly in every direction, filled with uncertainty, danger, and possibility in equal measure. Somewhere out there, other survivors might still exist, other ships, other hidden outposts, waiting quietly for their own moment to step out from the shadows. The galaxy, once so certain that humanity's story had ended completely, was only now beginning to understand that perhaps this was not an ending at all. Perhaps it was simply the beginning of something entirely new. The delegation ship was small, unarmed, and painted a plain, peaceful white. A deliberate choice by Speaker Doran to show the survivors aboard Horizon's Hope that this visit carried no threat. Doran had chosen to lead the delegation himself, alongside Commander Thrax and FRA, understanding that after everything his empire had done, this meeting deserved his personal presence, not just another official sent in his place. As the delegation ship approached the hidden asteroid field, Doran felt a strange nervousness he had not experienced in years, not even during the height of the war. He was about to stand face to face with the very species his empire had tried to destroy completely, the same species that had in return nearly destroyed one of his greatest cities. Approaching designated coordinates, the ship's pilot announced, "Horizon's Hope should be visible shortly." The asteroid field parted slightly ahead of them, revealing a small battle-worn human vessel drifting quietly among the rocks. It was nothing like the massive warships Doran had grown used to seeing across his empire's fleets. It was small, damaged in places, clearly built for survival rather than warfare. Doran felt something unexpected stir inside him as he looked at it, not fear, something closer to sadness, seeing how little this once great civilization had left. "They're hailing us," the pilot said. "Open the channel," Doran replied. A moment later, Commander Reyes's tired face appeared on the main screen, standing beside Maya Chen. Both of them watching the alien delegation ship carefully, their expressions cautious but not hostile. "Speaker Doran," Reyes said, his voice steady despite the obvious tension. "Thank you for coming personally. I wasn't certain you would. I felt it was important," Doran replied honestly. "After everything that has happened, I believe this conversation deserves more than words sent through officials who never truly understood the cost of this war." Rhea studied him carefully for a long moment before nodding slowly. Then let's talk properly this time. The meeting took place aboard Horizon's Hope itself, in a small, cramped room that had once served as the ship's dining area. 40 survivors, all that remained of the entire human race, as far as anyone knew, gathered quietly around the edges of the room, watching nervously as their leader sat down across from the alien speaker, who had once declared their entire species extinct. Doran looked around at the survivors, men, women, and a small number of children, their faces showing the exhaustion of years spent hiding, always afraid, always uncertain if today would be the day they were finally discovered and destroyed. "I want to begin," Doran said slowly, "with an apology, though I understand words alone cannot undo the damage already done." The room remained silent, many faces still guarded, unwilling to trust so easily after everything they had endured. 20 years ago, this war began over territory disputes, and grew into something far more destructive than anyone anticipated. Doran continued, "By the end, we saw your species not as people, but as an enemy to be eliminated entirely. That was wrong, deeply wrong, and it cost thousands of innocent lives on both sides that never needed to be lost." Maya, standing near the back of the room, felt her chest tighten as she listened. Memories of Earth's destruction still fresh and painful despite the months that had passed. "You destroyed our entire planet," she said quietly, her voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "Billions of people gone. An apology doesn't bring any of them back." "No," Doran agreed softly. "It doesn't. Nothing I say here can undo that. But I am here to ensure it never happens again to any world, human or otherwise." Reyes leaned forward slightly, studying Doran's expression carefully. "What exactly are you proposing?" Doran took a deep breath before answering. "A formal peace agreement, recognition of humanity as a protected species under galactic law, assistance in finding and reuniting other surviving human groups, wherever they may be hiding, and a promise backed by the full authority of the Galactic Council, that no human world, whenever you choose to rebuild one, will ever face attack from our forces again." The room fell into stunned silence. Nobody had expected such a complete offer, especially not this soon after Vexoria's devastating attack. "Why?" Maya asked, suspicion still clear in her voice. "Why offer all this now after everything?" "Because you're afraid of more ships like Ryan's." Doran did not deny it immediately. "Partly, yes," he admitted honestly. "Fear played a role in bringing me to this decision, but it's not the only reason." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "I stood in the Grand Hall and watched an entire galaxy celebrate the destruction of your people. I felt proud in that moment, believing we had finally secured lasting peace. Then I watched a single wounded human pilot prove that true peace cannot be built on destruction and fear. It can only be built on understanding, and the willingness to change, even when change is difficult." He looked directly at Maya as he continued. Ryan Cole did not need to destroy that shipyard to make his point. He could have simply disappeared, hidden forever, and no one would have ever known humanity survived. Instead, he chose to remind us, through devastating loss, that we had made a terrible mistake. I owe it to his memory, and to every human who suffered, because of decisions my empire made, to ensure that mistake is never repeated. The room remained quiet for a long moment, the weight of his words settling over everyone present. Finally, an elderly woman near the back of the room, one of the oldest survivors still living, spoke up, her voice frail but clear. "My grandson died on Earth," she said slowly. "My daughter too. I have hated your people for 20 years, Speaker Dorn. I still do somewhere deep inside me." Dorn met her gaze steadily, offering no excuses, simply listening. "But hate did not save my family," the woman continued, "and more war will not bring them back. If there is truly a chance for peace now, for the survivors still remaining, for whatever future our people might still have, I believe we owe it to those we lost to at least try." Reyes looked around at his people, seeing similar expressions of cautious, painful hope beginning to appear on many faces throughout the room. "We'll need time," Reyes finally said, turning back to Doran. "Time to discuss this among ourselves. Time to decide if we can truly trust this offer, after everything that has happened. Take whatever time you need," Doran said gently. "I understand trust cannot be rebuilt overnight, especially after 20 years of war and loss on both sides. But I promise you, this offer is genuine. and it will remain available for as long as you need to consider it. Over the following weeks, careful negotiations continued between the human survivors and the Galactic Council, slow and cautious, built on small steps rather than sudden trust. Commander Reyes and Maya worked closely with Threx and FRA, gradually building a working relationship that, while far from friendship, showed genuine signs of mutual respect beginning to grow. During this time, 3 more hidden groups of human survivors were discovered, scattered across different regions of former human territory. Each group having survived through their own means, hidden away since Earth's final battle. None possessed an Ember Core weapon like Ryan's ship, but each carried within them the same stubborn determination to survive that had defined humanity throughout the entire war. Slowly, carefully, these scattered survivors began coming together, drawn by news of the peace negotiations, hopeful for the first time in years that a real future might still be possible for their people. Speaker Doran personally oversaw the drafting of a formal peace treaty, one that would grant humanity official recognition as a protected species, along with a small uninhabited world within neutral territory where survivors could begin rebuilding, protected by council law from any future aggression. The treaty faced fierce opposition from several council members, particularly those who had lost family members or fleets during the war, and especially during Vexoria's devastating attack. But Doran remained firm in his conviction, using every bit of influence and respect he had built over his long career to push the agreement forward. We cannot build lasting peace on the foundation of old hatreds, he argued repeatedly in the Grand Hall, facing skeptical and sometimes hostile audiences. If we continue treating humanity as a threat to be eliminated, we will only create more Vexoras, more devastating losses on both sides. But if we choose understanding instead, we have a chance to end this cycle of violence permanently. Slowly, gradually, opinion within the council began to shift, aided significantly by public sentiment across the galaxy, where ordinary citizens, having heard Ryan's broadcast and the story of his desperate, heroic sacrifice, increasingly viewed the surviving humans with sympathy rather than fear. 6 months after the devastating battle at Victoria, the Galactic Council formally ratified the peace treaty, officially ending the 20-year war between humanity and the alien empire, and granting the surviving human population, now numbering just over 300 individuals gathered from several hidden groups, official protection, and a new homeworld to begin rebuilding their civilization. The ceremony took place in the Grand Hall, the same location where Doran had once declared humanity extinct to a celebrating crowd. This time, the mood was entirely different, solemn, respectful, and quietly hopeful. Doran stood once again at the center of the Great Hall, but this time, Commander Reyes stood beside him, representing the human survivors. Both leaders prepared to sign the treaty that would officially end their long, painful conflict. 20 years ago, Doran said, addressing the gathered council and the watching galaxy, we went to war against a species we barely understood, fighting over disputes that, looking back, seem small compared to the devastating cost paid by both sides. He looked over at Reyes, who nodded slightly, encouraging him to continue. 6 months ago, I stood in this very hall and declared that war won, believing we had achieved lasting victory through complete destruction. I was wrong then, and I have spent every day since working to correct that mistake. He turned to face Reyes directly. Today we do not celebrate victory over an enemy. Today we celebrate the beginning of peace between two peoples, who have both suffered too much for too long, over conflicts that should have been resolved through understanding, rather than warfare. Reyes stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly through the silent hall. On behalf of the surviving human people, he said, we accept this offer of peace not because we have forgotten what was lost. We never will forget, but because we choose to build something better for whatever future remains for our species. He paused, looking around at the assembled alien leaders watching carefully. We do this in memory of everyone we lost on Earth and beyond, and we do it in memory of Ryan Cole, whose sacrifice, though devastating, ultimately opened the door to this moment, proving that even in humanity's darkest hour, hope was never truly lost. Both leaders signed the treaty together, officially marking the end of the war and the beginning of an uncertain but hopeful new chapter for both their peoples. 1 year later, on a small green world within neutral territory, the beginnings of a new human settlement had taken root. Simple buildings built from a combination of salvaged human technology and materials provided by the Galactic Council formed the foundation of what survivors now hopefully called New Haven. Maya Chen stood on a small hill overlooking the growing settlement, watching children born after Earth's destruction, playing happily in fields of unfamiliar alien grass, laughing without any memory of the terrible war that had defined their parents' lives. Commander Reyes approached quietly, standing beside her, watching the same peaceful scene. "It's not Earth," he said softly, "but it's something." Maya nodded, feeling a mixture of grief and quiet hope she had grown used to carrying together inside her heart. "It's a beginning," she said. "That's all we can ask for now." Below them, near the settlement's small memorial garden, a simple monument stood, dedicated to everyone lost during the Long War, and especially to Ryan Cole, whose ship, Last Light, was remembered as the spark that finally brought this fragile piece into existence. Fra, who had become a frequent visitor to New Haven over the past year, helping coordinate ongoing support between the human survivors and the Galactic Council, walked up the hill to join them, carrying a small data device in her hands. "I have something you should see," she said, offering the device to Reyes. He took it carefully, activating the small screen. It showed a newly received signal, weak but clearly identifiable, coming from a distant, unexplored region of space, far beyond even the Empire's furthest borders. "Another survivor group?" Maya asked, hope and worry mixing in her voice simultaneously. "We believe so," Fira said. "The signal pattern matches old human military frequencies, similar to what we found from your group and from Ryan's ship before that. It seems there may still be more of your people out there, waiting to be found." Reyes looked at the signal data for a long moment, feeling the same fragile hope Maya had carried for the past year settle over him as well. "Then I suppose our work isn't finished yet," he said quietly. Mia smiled softly, looking out over the growing settlement below them, filled with survivors slowly rebuilding lives they once believed were lost forever. "No," she agreed. "But for the first time in a long time, that doesn't feel like a burden anymore." Far above New Haven, in the quiet emptiness of space, a small memorial satellite drifted silently, launched shortly after the peace treaty's signing, carrying a simple, permanent recording that would continue broadcasting quietly across the galaxy for generations to come. Ryan Cole's voice, tired but determined, echoed softly into the vast darkness. His final message now serving not as a warning of vengeance but as a lasting symbol of hope and resilience for everyone who heard it. "Humanity is not extinct, we are simply waiting." And now finally, after years of hiding, fighting, and loss, humanity was no longer simply waiting in the shadows. They were beginning